Putting economic sanctions does sound like a good way to pressure the Taliban to lessen their policy or stop the oppression Taliban has done to the Afghan people. But the fact that we face right now is that Taliban barely comply to the West, to what the West condemned. Get back into power in 2021 after years and years of fighting USA. All the sanction is proven not working at all to pressure off the Taliban, but caused a tremendous amount of suffering to the Afghanistan civilians, while the Taliban leaders remain unchanged with the economic sanctions put on them. With 20 years of sanctions with virtually nothing is changed, and the only visible impact is the harm on the innocent Afghanistan civilians. With that, we as international organizations and other nations will lift up the economic sanctions for the Taliban and the Afghan people. Proud to propose 3 things I want to set up in this debate. Firstly, we are lifting up the economic sanction. We will open up the trade to the Afghanistan people. We are going to allow Afghanistan and the Taliban to be on market. We will also gradually provide developmental aid to the Afghanistan. We want this to improve the situation for Afghan people, the most vulnerable actor in this debate. How does it look like? We as a government will invest on there with the capabilities of intervention if they are agree on this. For example, we are enabling them to do export and import, and we are enabling a factory being built there for the people to work, and this means that they are not contingent of the developmental aid that is controlled by the Taliban. Secondly, what is the alternative to pressure of the Taliban? We still put other type of pressure to the Taliban, like heavily pressure and engage the Taliban using diplomatic pressure, using non-economic pressure, or making international isolation for the Taliban. Thirdly, to preempt opposition main case about if we lift up the sanction, the Taliban will be richer and the situation will be worse for the Afghanistan people because the Taliban does not have any pressure to oblige to the West. We said that maybe in the worst case scenario, maybe the Taliban will be even worse or even more stricter. But at least in our side of the house, the Afghan people will have economic safety net to have a steady income, or like really if they really need to flee, they have the capital to do that. For Afghan people to at least build an average life so that they don't suffer as much as they did in the current status quo. 2 arguments I will submit in this debate. First argument, why the sanction does not work. Second argument, why the government side of the house are still able to pressure Taliban. First argument, then why the sanction does not work. Who is the main actor that we focus in this argument? The international organizations such as UN, EU, and other international organizations. And what is the interest of international organization? The interest of this international organization in this context is to help the humanitarian crisis that happened in Afghanistan. This is true because international organization like UN has a very prominent interest to solve humanitarian crises that happen in the world. That is why UN was built in the first place. UN main objectives are the maintenance of the international peace and security, which means that UN have the incentive to care and help the victims of humanitarian crisis. This is why this is likely, because the UN will put the people in consideration of aid and will assist the people in the conflicting places, so the opposition cannot say that they don't care about the people, they only want international hegemony. B. International organizations also have the interest of erasing human rights crisis as a part of their ideology about the democracy that they always hold. So with that established, what are the incentives of an international organization itself? What happened with the economic sanction of Afghanistan? Economic sanction was done in order for the international organization and others to suppress the economic capacity and development of Afghanistan people. Which made the Taliban very vulnerable in terms of resources or capital, so that they finally complied to what the international organization demand. This is what basically was expected, right? And that is basically what opposition best case scenario. But we know that is far from the truth, because what is basically happening is not only the Taliban was not deterred, but makes the situation for Afghan people 10 times worse, because they are oppressed under the Taliban ruler, but also know the only thing that can determine their life, which is money economy. The only thing that they can rely on right now is ultimately cut down by the West. To picturize this, Indonesia was living under Soeharto regimes that are oppressed, right? But basically keep them alive and surviving is that they have the money to support themselves, right? This is just a simple logic. But now, because they're literally banned from international trade or economic developmental aid and stuff, the most vulnerable people, which is an average Afghan, barely survive because now they cannot get rice with a reasonable price. Because three things it. It not only affects how Afghanistan international trade or market, but it also resulted on the currency instability for the Afghani to plummeted drastically, which makes it incredibly hard to even buy salt for them. And B, it affects the supply and demand chain, which make the price of goods to be super high, like sky high. And C, making the Afghan people to lose any chance of economic development because the developmental aid was blocked and the international trade was blocked and others. And what will happen if we still enforce the heaviest economic sanction? The situation for the civilian will not get worse. Will get worse and worse. Gitu deh, malas lanjutin. Because they are still oppressed by the Taliban, but also they basically have no way out to get a better life using economic tools. This is very important because as long as Taliban is not lessening their policy, the economic sanction will be heavily enforced. But we don't see the future of Taliban complying anytime soon, and that the interest of helping the vulnerable absorbed by the international organization will not be manifested at all, even in the best case scenario of the opposition status house. Sure, let's take the Taliban will comply to the economic sanction, but if it's so, it will be happening like the first or 2 years after the sanction was put. But until now, the 20 years or 30 years after the sanction was put, nothing is changed. So, which means the in-principality of sanction and practicality of sanction is not important and it is not effective anymore.